Greetings, Neo-Swedenborgians. Welcome to Out of the Blue Bee, number 109. I'm going to be doing this is our special Mother's Day episode. But before I start, I'm going to be referencing this chart in this book, which I will link below. This is Jehu and Mackenzie's Spirit Intercourse, first published in 1916, and I'm reading from the 1917 edition. In the 1917 edition, page 203, the family sphere, commonly called Summerland, 1,300 miles from Earth, light 100 to 110 degrees. Pet animals and birds are most numerous on this plain. Flowers and fruit in rich luxuriance. Habitations interspersed with gardens, houses built in brick and also stone. This is the principal sphere of children where they receive their education on arriving from Earth. Now for Mother's Day, I'm going to read from this book. Rebecca Springer, Intra, Muros, page 127. She says, the current of my life flowed on in heavenly ways until the months began to lengthen into years, and my daily studies ascended higher in the scale of celestial mystery. I never wearied of study, though much was taught and gained through the medium of observation in the journeys that I was permitted to take with my brother into different parts of the heavenly kingdom. I never lacked time for social pleasures and enjoyments, for there is no clashing of duties with inclination, no unfulfilled desires, no vain strivings for the unobtainable in that life as in the life of earth. Many precious hours of intercourse were spent in my dear father's home, and sometimes, on rare occasions, I was permitted to accompany him to his field of labor and assist him in instructing those lately come into the new life with little or no preparation for its duties and responsibilities. Now, as an aside, I'll say that one of the other books I talk about is Life in the World Unseen, Monsignor Hugh Benson. And this is also his job in that book. So her father's job in this book is instructing those lately come into the new life. That's also Monsignor Hugh Benson's job. Anyway, continuing on. On one occasion, he said to me, quote, I have the most difficult problem to deal with I have ever yet met in this work. It is how to enlighten and help a man who suddenly plunged from an apparently honorable life into the very depths of crime. I have never been able to get him to accompany me to the river where these earthly cobwebs would be swept from his poor brain, his excuse being always that God's mercy is so great in allowing him inside heaven's gate at all that he is content to remain always in the lowest scale of enjoyment in life. Now, in this book, when she first gets there, her brother Frank brings her to the river, and the river washes away all the worries of her earth life. But this person won't go to the river, as it says. Going on, it says, no argument or teaching thus far can make him alter his decision. He was led astray by infatuation for a strange woman and killed his aged mother in order to secure her jewels for this wretched creature. He was executed for the crime, of which in the end he sincerely repented, but he left life with all the horror of the deed clinging to his soul. Rebecca then says, has he seen his mother since coming here? Does she know of his arrival? So we'll see what happened. This man, to get the family jewels, killed his own mother and then was executed for the crime. So she says, Has he seen his mother since coming here? Does she know of his arrival? No, she is alone in this world, and it was not thought wise to tell her of his coming till his soul was in better condition to receive her. He was an only child, and does not lack the elements of refinement, but he was completely under the control of this vile though fascinating woman. It is said she drugged his wine and incited him to do the dreadful deed while under its influence, because of her hatred for his mother, whose influence was against her. When he came from under the influence of the wine, he was horrified at what he had done, and his infatuation for this woman turned to loathing, but alas, too late. He would not see her during his entire incarceration. How long was he in prison? Almost a year. Has he seen the Christ? Now, as an aside, I'll say, as I said just the other day, in this book there's a map of the spirit spheres, and the religiously specific spheres, like this, where Jesus is in this book, but not in this book. So the religiously specific spheres are on the lower realms, and then you rise up into higher spheres where the specific religions evaporate and everyone is one big family. But she's still in this sphere. And as I've also pointed out, it's like a world unto itself. So they don't see, some people have an overview of the spheres like in here, but other people, like a lot of near-death experiences, they see one world. They don't see the layered worlds. So anyway, I just want to make clear that my show is not Christian, but this book is Christian. So she says, has he seen the Christ? The father says, no, he begs not to see him. He is very repentant and grateful to be saved from the wrath he feels was his just punishment. But though he is conscious that his sin is forgiven, he does not yet feel that he can stand in the presence of the Holy One. And here, as upon earth, each must be willing to receive him. His presence is never given undesired. I have not yet appealed for higher help. My ambition is to lead these weak souls upward through the strength entrusted to me. Can you suggest anything that would probably reach him? Rebecca says, his mother. May I bring her? He thought for a moment and then said, a woman's intuition. Yes, bring her. And Rebecca says, I was soon on my way. I found the poor woman, laid the facts gently before her, and waited her decision. There was no hesitancy upon her part. In an instant she said, my poor boy, certainly I will go see him at once. We found my father waiting for us, and went immediately to the great home where these students stayed. It was a beautiful great building in the midst of a park with shaded walks and fountains and flowers everywhere. To one just freed from earth, it seemed a paradise indeed, but to those of us who have tasted heaven's rarer joys, something was wanting. We missed the lovely individual homes, the little children playing on the lawns, the music of the angel choir. It was tame indeed beside the pleasures we had tasted. We found the young man seated beneath one of the flower-laden trees, intently perusing a book that my father had left with him. There was a peaceful look upon his pale face, but it was rather the look of patient resignation than ardent joy. His mother approached him alone, my father and I remaining in the background. After a little time, he glanced up and saw his mother standing near him. A startled look came upon his face, and he rose to his feet. She extended her arms towards him and cried out pathetically, John, my dear boy, come home to me, I need you. That was all. With a low cry, he knelt at her feet and clasped her knees, sobbing, Mother, mother. She stooped and put her tender arms around him. She drew his head gently to her breast and showered kisses on his bowed head. Oh, the warm mother love, the same in earth and heaven. Only the Christ love can exceed it. Here was this outraged mother sent into eternity by the hands of him who should have shielded and sustained her, bending above her repentant son with the mother love with which her heart was overflowing, shining upon him from her gentle eyes. I saw my father turn his head to conceal his emotion, and I knew that my own eyes were wet. My father had explained to the mother that the first thing to be accomplished was to get her son to the river, so we now heard her say caressingly, "Come, John, my boy, take the first steps upward, for your mother's sake, that in time I may have the joy of seeing you in our own home. Come, John, with mother." She gently drew him, and to our great joy we saw him rise and go with her, and their steps led them to the river. They walked hand in hand, and as far as we could see them, she seemed to be soothing and comforting him. "Thank God," said my father fervently. "There will be no further trouble now. When they return, he will see with clearer vision." And so it proved. After this, by divine permission, I became much of the time a co-laborer with my father, and thus enjoyed his society and his instruction much oftener than otherwise I could have done. I want to just go back to here where she says, "Come, John, my boy, take the first step upward for your mother's sake, that in time I may have the joy of seeing you in our own home." So I've read from Francesco, and Francesco also meets his mother and father, and they say the exact same thing, where if you rise yourself up and you come up to a higher level, it'll be easier for us to visit you. So there's this in this world we're talking about, right here, and this is the map that I've pointed out already, corresponds exactly with the Van Allen belts, even though this map was published 40 years before any information on the Van Allen belts was even discovered. And so you have higher levels and lower levels. The higher levels have a brighter degree of sunlight and all kinds of nicer things. I'll link this below. But it appears that when you ascend to the higher levels, it gets more and more difficult to go down to the lower levels. It's like going down it's like scuba diving. You have to, you go deep. You can only go so deep. And it seems like the way that this person and the way that Francesco, and also somewhat in this book, and also in Life in the World Unseen, the people in the higher planes, it takes effort to come down to visit these people in the lower planes. So when you get higher yourself, it's easier for them to visit you. Okay, well, happy Mother's Day. Thanks. See ya.